Gene Key 39, The Shadow of Provocation. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Eye of the Crown. We are definitely still talking about the Gene Keys as we have just launched our own guide to the Gene Keys on Udemy. And I am uploading now my interpretations of the Gene Keys. And in my studies, I came across this video, and it's a perfect example of Gene Key 39 and the shadow of provocation. So I thought that I would introduce this to you guys as a sampler, and then if you want to dive more into the gene keys, you can. Now, many people who uncover the gene keys, they talk about tone of voice when it comes to provocation. But I wanted to bring back the basics of the idea of provocation, which is a sexual connotation, being sexually explicit and provocative, or the provocateur. And the reason that I want to bring this to the conversation is because it's a personal journey of mine. And I wanted to share with you how provocation can actually throw you into the storms of your own moods. And quite often, there's a justification of your own victimhood to feel the mood that you feel. This is because, in a space of provocation, one is actually dealing with their emotional body and feeling trapped. At the Gene Key chart, Gene Key 39, the victim of your moods. And with Gene Key 39 being the archetype of the liberator, the shadow actually makes you confront your moods. It makes you confront your fears. In fact, the repressive nature of the victim is trapped. When fear is not expressed, it traps us. What is really trapped is your unlimited reservoir of life force and creativity. Your life energy is frozen, locked into habitual emotional patterns. Your awesome human potential lies completely inert as though asleep. So let's go back and watch the video. And while the video is quite comedic, it also can be very triggering to certain people. In fact, a version of myself 5 years ago would be extremely triggered by this. And that's why I'm making this today, to show you the transcendence. So we can definitely say that the lady in the towel is the provocateur. This is a really good conversation about provocation because in the Gene Keys they talk about it being a tone of voice, but in many of my own experiences it wasn't what someone was saying but what someone was doing. So I think that this is such a really good addition to the conversation of Gene Key 39. Okay, so when we read about the provocative nature of somebody from unlockyourdesign.com, it says, as you begin to feel your fear, it transforms into anger, and you begin to act it out or project it onto others. So the provocative nature of the shadow is someone who wants to push your buttons, okay? This is the energy of provocation. It's actually fear made dynamic, but there is not freedom within it. So the gift of Gene Key 39 is the gift of dynamism. The reason that the provocateur in this example, the lady in the towel, isn't quite in the gift level is because they are actually attempting to push someone's buttons, right? Whether it's the woman's or the man's, right? From my personal depiction, I would have quickly biasedly been like, oh yeah, she's trying to make that woman feel insecure, for my own projections and victim of my own moods, as this energy is so absolutely on point in helping us to see how we are a victim of our own moods, because we can feel, and the power of the provocateur is to help you to feel the fear. But if you've been trapped in the fear, then you actually don't know how to creatively express it. So we'll talk about that in a second. The provocateur actually is acting out of anger. So it may seem like they're being dynamic, but they're actually on the other extreme because there's no freedom within that dynamic. They are still as well trapped by their anger and by their need to externalize the fear and cause other people to feel specific emotions, specifically pain. By provoking others, you are simply heaping misery back on your self. Therefore, the provocative nature, the provocateur, is very much so trapped as well. And so when you are in an experience where you're having someone who is pushing your buttons, this is something that you could consider. When we watch this play by play, we can actually see that the provocateur is very chill and kind of lightful and delightful type of attitude. So they don't have the anger at the forefront, but it's the action of provoking that will show you the anger. The question might be, well, why is this person doing this? They're just such a bad character person. But somewhere in this provocateur's life, this person is dealing with fear as well, but have transformed the fear into anger so that they could have this false sense of maybe winning. When we watch this play by play, we see that the guy and the girl that he's with are both now in the victimhood of being trapped. When we're looking at provocation and the victim of being trapped, both the guy and the girl are actually victims of their moods. They're both having a response to the issue of feeling trapped. And since we're just really doing this by visuals, we can only go off of that. But in a lot of ways, the girl and the guy are both trapped. The guy is trapped by the distraction and maybe the fear of having his own freedom to do what he wants. The girl is trapped by her predicament in the sense that she actually is sandwiched in between the provocateur and the person who should equate to safety for her. In this sense, the girl also is trapped in the sense that her fear may be trapped in not knowing what to do. And they're both trapped. Both the girl and the guy are both trapped by the situation. And thus, because someone is feeling the pressure of being trapped, right? The person who is exhibiting the most fear out of the situation is going to have the biggest violent response, which ends up being the woman. Unfortunately, becomes physically violent because of the situation. Meanwhile, when we look at the entire situation from the provocateur side, we can say that we can ask the question, why is it that someone is going to be so provoking, right, and cause other people to feel? And this is that emotional violence. So in the shadow of provocation, one person does not have to speak or say anything to actually provoke violence, and they can actually have it be manifested in the person that they're provoking. And this is why in learning about Gene Key 39, we actually become liberated from getting lost in our feelings. And in a lot of ways, we could also say that the man is trapped in his response. He's unable to make a conscious, focused decision about something. He's completely trapped. And so while the conversation could be, oh, he's trapped by the girl that he's with, he's also trapped by the girl that is the provocateur, because he cannot make a conscious decision outside of those things. He's trapped regardless. So the fear actually is very much so prominent there as well. And so while we're looking for liberation, we have to recognize where in ourselves we are getting provoked. And when we feel those feelings, we have to be able to recognize that the provocateur is deeply angry, right? And taking out that anger in either a physical way by doing something, or in their tone of voice by how they say certain things. And when we can realize this, that's when you actually have more options. So you see that. So eventually the girl that he's with leaves, but you'll see that there are other options that can actually be on the table. And while leaving is a great option, there are other options when one is not completely overrun by their moods. Because when you have that space between the feeling of your body and understanding what your body's feeling, as well as the consciousness, you have so much more creativity in what it is that you can or want to do. So the power of you being able to handle situations where you're provoked is about sitting with your feelings. Stop focusing on the external stimuli And a lot of people who are victims of provocative people, they become even more victimized because they don't see that they have a choice in what they can do and how they can react. And a lot of the times they feel like their only choice is the feeling versus the creativity that they can bring to it. And creative things could be to joke around, to do other things that would help you to feel better in whatever capacity it would be to help you feel better. Okay, so, but the idea here is that when you're a victim of being provoked, you have to immediately recognize that the person who's provoking you is also deeply hurt. And but they're also fulfilling something. They're awakening you to a space where you are trapped, and they are helping you feel liberated by dealing with those uncomfortable emotions and having the conscious and the self-love and the well-being to make the choices that would be best suited for you. And the creativity comes in all of the options that you can make when you're able to have that patience within yourself to coax yourself through the feeling. Ask yourself, what is the feeling? Ask yourself, why is the feeling? And be able to satisfy your needs from that internal sense of comfort and safety versus the external violence that you may be currently dealing with.